Podcast, episode 405, recorded live Wednesday morning, October 10th, 2018. It's 10:10. Show notes wise, there's really not much going on. Got last week's out fairly early. I've been having to go on site after Wednesday for a customer, and that throws off my production thing, but we're getting it through.
Very nice.
I'm finally honing my production PowerShell scripts, so that's speeding things up. I've got a collection of poorly written, shoddily maintained PowerShell scripts that I use to do things, and every so often I'm tweaking. So I was going to put a later note in. Since, I don't know, maybe a year ago, I've been making a conscious effort to move off of Dropbox. OneDrive is now at a spot where I can actually use it, and it's not frustrating for me, and it syncs everything. And I mean, all the stuff that I used to like about Dropbox, 5-6 years ago, OneDrive has now. And so I recently moved all my scripts over. I moved all the podcast stuff over. I used to save it in OneDrive. Now or Dropbox now is in OneDrive. So all the new patches came out yesterday for SharePoint. So I'm dutifully updating my stuff in that. It was all in Dropbox. And I'm editing all my files, and like something just doesn't feel right. Like files aren't exactly the way that I think they're supposed to be. And then it occurs to me 2 months ago on this machine that I'm on, I created a new profile, and I decided not to install Dropbox. So this machine is not syncing to Dropbox anymore, but I still have the Dropbox folder from before when I was syncing with the other account. And then I've got a laptop that has Dropbox on it and is syncing, but I don't have the Dropbox client open up automatically because it kills your CPU. And with my laptop, if I'm on a plane or traveling, I don't want it to, burn my battery up. So I found out that between all these different machines, writing to Dropbox, but none of them actually syncing to Dropbox, I had like 6 versions of all these files. So I've been doing that this morning, moving stuff from the different Dropboxes into OneDrive so that it's all synced up. But
You are a very productive person. I'm glad that you could share with us the trials and tribulations of keeping your own files in sync.
I've got like 5 or 6 different machines here, and
oh, that's crazy. I use this desktop PC 99.7% of the time. I have a Surface Pro that I carry around that, if I have to go somewhere like next week going to the conference, but I'm all desktop all the time.
Yeah, I've got my desktop, and then I've got another machine that if I have to VPN into a customer, I use that so that I don't have to VPN in from this one, though I've kind of been moving to virtual machines for that. And then I've got a machine that I take when I go on site. It's a laptop, so there's 3. I've got about 57 tablets that are, strewn about. That's,
We all know about your tablet habit. That is for certain.
So my wife does some volunteer work for a foundation here in town, and they're having a fundraiser in a couple of weeks, and they wanted to get a Square reader so they could take money at the door and all that. And I've done that before. I do it with the school's PTO, so she's asking some questions about that, what to get. And we're sitting there, watching TV and doing stuff, and she's like, well, isn't this a switcheroo? I'm the one shopping for tablets on the internet now. I'm like, shut up, woman. Nobody thinks this is funny.
Can't you just donate one of your 17?
Well, that's what I told her. I'm like, I've got a bunch of tablets. I can just give one. She's like, no, they want to have one. They can just, I'm like,
I've got 7 that meet that exact.
You could walk into my office and pick any one, and I would never notice. Like, I would never be able to tell you which one you took.
Your obsession. So,
yep.
Before we, since you never stopped talking, I never got it in. But you mentioned it was 10:10. So I don't know if people know this. It's not really as relevant these days as it used to be. But it used to be back when we had, those analog clocks everywhere, right? You had a clock on the wall with the spinny numbers, the thing our kids have to learn how to tell time on.
Uh-huh.
In all advertising materials, anytime that they had one of those clocks, they would always set it to 10:10 because it made it look like the clock was smiling. So it subconsciously made you happier.
Yep.
Just, stupid things that we know for no reason other than, what do you do?
I don't know why we wouldn't want to make a clock make us happy. And that's one of the things. Maybe that's why, kids these days, whatever, it's because they don't have analog clocks everywhere smiling at them.
Probably
Maybe that's why they're all so sad.
I also enjoyed the transition as we went from the analog clocks to the digital clocks, right? Because it was on the list somewhere, the checklist for the set was, set the clock to 10:10. So in the early days, all the digital clocks were still set to 10:10 because the person had, right? Well, it's what we've always done. We've always set it to 10:10. No!
Oh, I'm going to set all my clocks to 10:10. And pretty soon, for me, in the central time zone, it will be 10:10 on 10:10.
Oh, and Mark Christman looks like he is currently presenting. So hi, Mark's meeting. I'm glad he's playing this for you instead of you listening to him talk. Listening to us talk
or the
about
stuff he's
smiling.
normally watching. Yeah. Oof.
So,
Scary stuff.
all right.
So speaking of me being productive, as I have been this morning so far, last week I was productive and I blogged something that you and I have threatened to blog and talk about 100 times. But I finally got around to doing it because I had to explain it to somebody for like the 100th time. And I'm like, I just need to get this down. And I don't fault anybody for not knowing it. I was late to the party as well. But it's this ability to have multiple Office 365 logins or anything logins, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, inside of a browser and be able to keep multiple browsers open at the same time logged in as different accounts without using in private mode or anything like that. And we've talked about it in the show a bunch of times. I think probably talking about it on the show last week is what made me do it. So this is just, and I've got Chrome. I did it in Chrome, so I used the Chrome manage people thing. Got a lot of comments on Twitter. Apparently Firefox has some containers that do it as well.
Well, it's not like Firefox was an add-in though, right? Whereas the Chrome does it natively.
Yeah, Chrome does it natively, and I couldn't tell from Firefox, and I don't have Firefox installed anywhere, and I wasn't going to install Firefox just to do that. Yeah. And just yesterday morning, yesterday afternoon, I was working with a consultant on site. We were talking about some stuff, and we were trying some things and migrations, and he was kind of grousing about how to handle all of that. I'm like, do you know about the people in Chrome? And it was, it's like the third time in a week I've explained this to somebody. It's like, oh my God, has that always been there?
Yeah, I had the same conversation with one of my customers last Thursday. He's like, well, I got 3 Office 365 tenants. I never know which one I'm in. I'm like, stop. The entire engagement that you've paid me for is about to be value delivered in this next 10 minutes. And he was not, so he's Canadian, so he didn't, get all excited, right? He didn't do the American, jump up and down, jump on the sofa and say, I love my wife or any of that type of stuff. But he did at the end say, I'm really going to go look at that again. I'm like, I think that's Canadian for, that was a good idea.
That's as excited as he's going to get. Yeah. It's so, talking about how late I was to the party, I've been doing this in Office 365 for a year now. I don't know when, 2 years, something like that. But for the podcast, I've got, Google bought YouTube and all that. So I've got my regular Google account that I use for my calendars and all that kind of stuff. But then because of the YouTube thing, there's a second Google account that I have for the podcast. And there's been a couple of times where I would go to YouTube, I would be logged in as me, I would upload the podcast, realize I uploaded to the wrong place, have to go in. And Google on their sites does a tremendous job with identity management.
Yes.
Microsoft should steal those folks and make that happen. So I have to, and then it occurred to me like 2 months ago, why don't I just make another person in Chrome for the podcast? And then it will always be the right one. Yeah.
And now, so I haven't figured out, can you rename the person?
If you log, so you can name the person, it's all stored in the registry, so you could probably do it that way. If you sign in to a Google account with that person, it will pull the Google account's name in and rename the person that way. So like my one for the podcast shows up as Cloudy because I think the account name is Cloudy Podcast. Yeah. So that one shows up differently.
But so like for my customer ones, I can't rename them. So if I named it, pain in the butt customer, it's always going to say pain in the butt unless I go looking in the registry. I'll have to do that.
Yeah, it's in the registry. And so the registry thing is funny because I've got a customer that does everything in VDIs.
Yep. And
the VDIs get reset every Friday night. And one of the casualties of that is Chrome doesn't completely understand VDI. And so every Monday morning, all my persons are gone, all my people are gone. So I have to go in and create them, but it doesn't delete it all. So like if I would name the user exactly the same way, sometimes it would pull some of that stuff in. So I was doing some spelunking, trying to figure out where things were at. And yeah, there's a big hive of registry keys that store all that stuff. So you might be able to change it there.
Interesting. Yeah. So the one downside I have is the Google account that was like the one that Chrome thought it was tied to when I first discovered this wonderful feature is the wrong Google account. So my default one that has all my bank passwords and all that saved is not the Google account I want. So it calls me the wrong.
I bet you can move all that.
Yeah, I need to.
It's either in the file system or the registry. I bet you can migrate all that.
And I need to look harder, but I can barely have enough time to eat lunch most days, so I have not done that.
So I got that one, and I've kind of teased a couple of times. I've got another blog post in the hopper on how to do that exact same thing, but with PowerShell. So it's going to be our friend Credential Manager, saving all the different credentials out and hitting it that way.
Well, then, and so a slight, it's not on the list of topics, but I've also been kind of starting to eyeball like password manager. So I've used one, like a standalone, password manager probably since about the year 2000 that I got off of
.net or something.
Yeah, right. And at this point, I'm like, it's so old that no one even would ever imagine what it is. So I feel like really secure using it. But so I've been trying to look at things a little bit like LastPass and stuff like that. So I don't know if you have a direction, any thoughts on those type of tools, or do I just need to go do some homework on LastPasses and its complements?
I have not played with those much. I am in favor of the idea, but I have not. So my concern about them, and again, these things have been out for however long, and security is just a lot different now than it was when they came out. I am afraid to have all of my passwords stored on somebody else's server. It's basically what it comes down to. And so I have not embraced any of them because I don't know which ones make me feel the least scared.
Right.
So I can't really recommend one. So I have a method where I've got all my stuff, and I'm not going to say what it is publicly, not because anybody would be able to hack it, but because it's so embarrassing that you would all lose total respect for me. But I do have something, because that's one of the things that I have done forever, is every online account that I sign up for gets a unique username or a unique email address and unique password. And originally I did that to combat spam, because if somebody started spamming me and they wouldn't let me unsubscribe, I would just kill that email address, and then they couldn't spam me anymore. And then it turns out that it ended up being a great security thing too, because then when they would inevitably get hacked, that username and password wouldn't work anywhere else. So that's some. So in the chat room, they're talking about LastPass, KeepPass are pretty good.
Yeah,
so
well,
yeah,
and Brody's there, Devolution's password vault manager sounds like it's the same as LastPass or 1Password, but he can install it on-prem, so he has a corporate deployment maybe.
Yeah, and I've used that. So they're the folks that make the remote desktop manager. As an MVP, you get a free copy of that Devolution's password vault manager. I have used that one, and that one is not bad. I have not. So then it becomes the whole, how does it interact with your phone? Most of the passwords I use these days are in the browser, and Chrome syncs all that for me. So that's taken a lot of the pressure off of me cracking this nut.
Yeah. Well, and for me, and my goal here is actually, it's not probably what everyone else is thinking about. It's not for like managing my passwords. What I really want to do is I want to roll it out as a place to store customer account passwords, so that me, and the umpteen people, I think we're hiring another person today, can continue to, all have access to these passwords instead of it just being locked away on just my machine today.
Yeah. So you are, so definitely the Devolutions one, I think will do a corporate thing.
But then I'd have to have a server, right? And we're a cloud company, so.
I'm pretty sure they do that. I'm pretty sure they thought of that. They've heard of this cloud thing. I would check that one out. And again, the Devolutions folks, they give MVPs free software. So anything nice I say about them, keep in mind that it might be colored by the fact that they give me free software. But I swear by their remote desktop manager thing, and it's the same kind of thing. You wouldn't do it so much now because you don't RDP into servers, but I can have multiple installations of this all pointing to any number of different shared files or cloud locations or whatever, and I can get into servers and it saves passwords and settings and all those kind of things. It's pretty crazy. I've been using that for years. Love it.
Very cool. All right, so there you go. Random passwords. Yeah, and definitely if you're listening, you're like, you're screaming at your radio right now, being like, "Hey, dummies, use this password tool. Tweet us, email us, something. Tell us." Right. Todd and I have these conversations. We do not know everything, especially about stuff like this. So we love the feedback. We love the chat room is currently blowing up talking about these different options. Yep. So feel free, even if you're listening to this, 6 months from now when Todd gets it released, you can still send us stuff.
Yeah, and you can hit me up on Twitter at Todd Clint. This Yahoo is at Shane's Cows. You can also leave a note in the show notes. You go to toddclint.com/podcast 405. Leave something in the comments. A lot of different ways to get a hold of us. All
right. Well, we got number B. You want to do number B?
Number B. Yeah. So the folks at Syskit, and I do I'm like a part-time guy for them. I do some of their marketing stuff. So again, this is a paid advertisement, but they have a product called Security Manager, and they recently blogged about how they've added some management for Teams and OneDrive, some reporting and things like that. And that is becoming something that is falling under the purview more and more of corporate IT departments. So back in the day when everything was on-prem, there were databases and log files and stuff, and whatever crazy unique report an IT department needed, they could probably figure out a way to pull it kicking and screaming out of whatever the system was. With things in the cloud, we don't have access to the back end like that anymore. So these utilities where we're able to get these reports are starting to become a bigger and bigger deal to rollouts. And I've got a customer right now that's doing a big Office 365 rollout, and there's all the technical hurdles of, how do we architect it so that it makes sense, and how do we get the data in, and how do we train people, all those things. And then we were talking to one of their review boards, and one person's like, how do I get reports on this? How do I get audit? How do I audit this? Like, well, that is a different story. And here's a couple of tools that do it. But Syskit Security Manager is one of them. So go out to syskit.com. They've got a bunch of great products you should already be using. Shame on you if you're not, but check out their Security Manager product.
It's security's been a very hot topic with us lately. I'm glad that our sponsors are both helping with that. So very cool.
It is, and I've had this discussion with customers. It's a very there've been breaches lately. Google Plus had a breach that they talked about here the other day, and Facebook had the big breach. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't even look at the Google Plus one. I probably am being irresponsible that I have not went and found out why.
Well, and I don't go to the Onion as much as I used to anymore. And when I saw the thing that, Google Plus had been hacked, I thought it was an Onion article because I'm like, Google Plus, like nobody's used that thing in years. Like I have kids that it's not been used the entire time my children have been alive. But turns out it was a real story. I had no idea.
All right. So next up, this is a fabulous SharePoint thing. But last week we had a client who called in. He's somebody who's looking to use SharePoint kind of as like he wants to go build like this big web app solution. We're like, hey, I think the file sharing stuff you want to do, you could probably just do with SharePoint and take advantage of some of the external sharing capabilities. So we kind of were messing around with some stuff as we were like spitballing ideas for him. Like it's kind of one of those deals where he asked a question that we'd never thought about. So we have chats about that.
Yeah.
And so we tried out some stuff, in our tenant, external sharing was working no problem for different team sites that we'd made along the way. Like, oh, okay. And then Nicola jumped in and she said, well, I've been using communication sites. She's been kind of our one that's been digging in on communication sites, hub sites, and this, new model that I barely understand anymore.
Sure.
And so I was like, well, yeah, just go to that communication site, hit the button, and she did the old hit the button 7 times, and much more elegantly than me and my dinosaur hand here.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't let her share. I'm like, well, what the heck? So I jumped over to our SharePoint management, so Office, the admin portal, SharePoint settings. And I'm like, external sharing is enabled. So I was like, all right, we'll go to PowerShell. So I jumped over to PowerShell and I said, all right, I'm going to do set SPO site, the URL, and then dash sharing capability, external user, and guest sharing, right? I want to be able to share with the whole universe.
Yep.
And it said womp, womp, womp. Thankfully, though, the message came back and it's like, well, you can't set a site at a higher level or a more permissive level of sharing than your tenant is. I'm like, well, my tenant says the little checkbox.
Yeah.
So I bust out old get SPO tenant, and at the tenant level, there is a sharing capability. And it was set to, I don't have it in my notes, but a lesser version of that sharing. I'm like, but that's not what the user interface says.
Yeah.
So I ran set SPO tenant, sharing capability, external users, and guest sharing. So that set the whole tenant to that level.
Yep.
Yay. I went back and ran set SPO site, set it to that level. Yay. Communication site shared. Yay.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny lessons in there. I had a similar discussion with a customer because that sharing stuff shows up in many places. Obviously, PowerShell, like you mentioned, SharePoint Admin Center.
Yep.
But then there's the other SharePoint Admin Center, the new one, and then there's OneDrive.
Yeah.
So there's 4 places where that sharing thing can come up. And it should be the same value everywhere. But I think it was between the OneDrive Admin Center and the classic SharePoint Admin Center. I could change it in one and go to the other one and refresh it quickly enough that it would show the old value. And so basically what had happened with the customers, they had accidentally done that. They had both of them up. They had changed one. they went back to the other one and refreshed the page, and it had a different value. And they're like, well, hey, wait a minute. I thought these two were the same setting. And I'm like, there's some weird syncing going on in the background, and you caught it before it synced through. So yeah, there's so a couple of lessons when we were talking about this before. Number one, some of these settings you have to set at the tenant level and then at the site level, which trying to balance those out. And then sometimes those settings aren't exactly the same everywhere, so you just have to cover all your bases. And this is one of them.
Yeah, and this is definitely one of those things. I don't want to say this is how SharePoint Online always works, right? This could definitely be a case of I pressed the sharing button, 6 months ago, and I had it, on a slant on that day. So when they migrated this new methodology, it took the slant, inverted the slant. Right, that was one of the lessons Todd and I wanted you guys to take out of this. Is not necessarily you need to go do this to share communication sites, but you have these sharing capabilities in all the different places Todd mentioned. So make sure that if you're having problems, you don't just throw your hands up in the air like you don't care, but you kind of go and try to dig in. There's lots of different places to look for these things.
Yeah, and they're not all the same between tenants. So I've got a number of settings now between tenants that I have, my tenant, a demo tenant, customer tenants, other consultant tenants, and it's just not all synced up. So you just know there's different pockets of farms that are at different revs of whatever. So yeah, it's something to keep your eyes on.
Yeah, and I think, really at SharePoint Online, one of its main goals these days is to make us all feel stupid, right? We'd all gotten too big of heads. We'd all been like, I'm really smart. I mean, like with SharePoint, 2010, I literally knew where every button was cold. You could ask me how to do a thing, I just recite off the top of my head. You click this screen, then this screen, then this screen, and that'll get you that button.
Yep.
SharePoint Online, they move those darn buttons every day, I think.
Yep.
And like you said, different tenants seem to have them in different places. And I feel stupid every time a customer asks me a SharePoint question. Because I'm like, well, try clicking on site settings over the, nope. Or, no, well, site settings doesn't show up anymore. Now you have to click on site information. And then the site settings button's inside. No. So.
Yep. And even if you're on the same version, they do that A/B testing stuff. So yeah, it's crazy. And so it's good that we've got things like PowerShell where that seems a little more stable that you can just go out there.
All right. What?
Speaking of more SharePoint-y and online stuff, the free SharePoint Migration Tool.
I like free.
We like free. Free's my favorite. Yesterday or the day before, Bill Baer tweeted out that there was some new improvements to it. So there's a new version of the SharePoint Migration Tool. If you're using that migration tool, there's a new version out, so you want to update it. It is now 2.1.102.0. Fix some bugs, tweak the design, the interface a little bit. And we bring this up because this is part of your migration strategy. When you're looking to migrate from whatever to Office 365, some of it's going to be, this tool, some of it's going to be PowerShell scripts, some of it's just going to be dragging things in Explorer, but it's just good to know what your options are. And the SharePoint Migration Tool, I think they announced this, 2 years ago at Ignite, something like that. And they have stayed on it. They've continued to improve it. It's a decent product now. So just know that you might have some simple content that you can use the SharePoint Migration Tool now to bring over.
Yeah, and that's, we keep, so just yesterday we had a meeting with somebody here locally, and it was a guy, was like, we've been using a file share for, umpteen years. And, so what happened to this poor guy was, so they were like a child or like I don't know even that. They were using IT from another company because both companies had the same owner, but the two companies weren't related.
Okay, yep.
So, but, when the owner spun up the second company, and the first company has, hundreds of employees, the second one's got 13. So they were using the IT from there. Well, the first company got busted for old Microsoft VSA or whatever, right? Showed up and said, hey, licensing. Part of that rolled out that the 13 people company, you guys have to get your own Office 365 subscription. So we're helping them migrate off of, they're just two simple file share drives that they've used for 1,000 years into a SharePoint structure. And they really just want it to be one for one. And like, you got to change your thinking around how this goes. And I don't know, it felt like we kind of yesterday in the first consultation, at least got their brains wrapped around how they could start to move out of the Stone Ages. I mean, file shares are so 1990s. Oh. But I don't know. It's, it was just really tough, right? Trying to translate these easy concepts to someone who like, I just want the X drive to be the X drive, but I want it to be on a website. It's not how it works.
I'm doing a similar migration, including an X drive. And yeah, and this is where we've really hit the user training hard, because file shares are very limited in what they can do.
Yes.
But that also makes them very easy to wrap your head around.
Yes.
And part of the reason that this customer is moving to Office 365 is not that file shares aren't working for them. File shares are, but they want to take advantage of some of the regulatory stuff that Office 365 does. The auditing and the scanning for PII and things that file shares just can't do because they're dumb. And the user adoption is just going to be painful for these folks. And so I've been really hitting the user training hard. We've been doing sessions. We're going to have office hours, things like that. And just trying to get these people happy with understanding that, this is a good thing. It's going to be scary, but yeah, just not copying it one for one. And this customer's been really smart about that. They've been pulling groups out and they've said, okay, you got this huge directory structure. First off, pick 10% that you're not going to move. Just kill 10% right now. And then, we'll start breaking things up, and they're doing a really intelligent job of it. And I'm constantly impressed with the thought they've put into it. So it's not just a one for one thing. Very
cool. And so speaking of migrating off to Office 365, if you're the type of company who helps people move off to Office 365, one of the things you need to do is probably be helping to sell those licenses for Office 365 so you can get a little spiff. Well, scrape a little dollar off there for yourself. Buy yourself.
It's free money. I don't know why you wouldn't do it.
Exactly. And so if you want to do that, you need a relationship. And that relationship, we would highly recommend you check out our friends at AppRiver. They've got great security tools, right? It's been one of our themes lately, and these guys have awesome tools that help you around the security around that. And I think even better for you trying to sell this stuff is not really their security tools, but it's their security assessment tools. So you can use the free tools they provide to you as one of their resellers to go in and, during the sales pitches, fire up your laptop and be like, look, I just scanned your environment. Look at all the things that are wrong that we would be able to help you with if we were the ones selling you Office 365. They don't need to know that you're using AppRiver behind the scenes, but really great platform. And so security being one of our main things, I want you guys to make sure you're thinking about our sponsor, AppRiver, for that type of stuff.
Yeah, and we've talked about AppRiver before. They're not some crazy fly-by-night places trying to take advantage of the Office 365 gold rush. They've been around forever. Yes. I mean, it's just they've been doing SharePoint and the cloud. And the place that I first started using them was long before the cloud was even a thing. Even before the cloud was a punchline, which was before the cloud was a legitimate thing, is AppRiver did, WAN acceleration things. I mean, they've just been doing this thing that we're doing forever. They just know it inside and out. So if you want to hitch your wagon to a security horse, they're a good one to hitch to.
Now, and keep in mind, though, if they do decide to start trying to sell you Bitcoin or something, then you might get a little skeptical. But as long as they're selling you Office 365 and security products, I think you're in good shape.
Yeah, Shane and I bought some Bitcoin. Basically what we did inadvertently was I think we probably found the day that Bitcoin was worth the very most it could ever be worth. And we bought a bunch. And not a bunch, but more than I would have in hindsight. I haven't looked in months. I can't do it.
So I looked the other day, and I am less than a third of the what I bought. So.
Oh.
And that was All right, we're not gonna have that though, because that is sad. So new stuff coming in SharePoint Online. That's probably happy. So what's happy? What's new in SharePoint Online admin?
Well, I just saw. So we talked a little bit earlier about how there's the SharePoint admin interface, which is the classic interface, and now there's going to be the new one that they've been teasing for a while. And I just saw something that there's going to be some announcements on that tomorrow. So keep your browser handy. And hopefully there'll be some things. I don't know. That's been something they've been kind of teasing us with for a while, and I'm curious what that will end up being. So if you've been to the SharePoint admin thing for a while, you got the classic one, and they got the banner across the top that says, "Hey, shiny new one coming." So we've been playing with it for a while, but there've been places where it's been lacking. There's just some settings you can't find in the new one, and so I'm hoping that whatever the big announcement is, tomorrow or the next day, that it's going to have some of those things, and I'm looking forward to it. I kind of, like I said, I bought back and forth between that, OneDrive, PowerShell, all of those things.
All right. Then what do you got for G here? I need some time on J because we're making decisions today. I'm buying something after we finish the conversation.
Happening. So I just saw this in the news, and I just kind of wanted to bring it up. Microsoft, the headline is Microsoft open sources its patent portfolio. And this is one of those things where inadvertently or not, this is kind of a clickbait headline. It makes it sound like that Microsoft is just opening up everything they've got patents on. Clearly, that's not the case, but it is very specific to their Linux products. And this is something, the patent troll thing and all that. So Microsoft has a bunch of patents on Linux-based things, both kernel and application things. They make a bunch of money on it. I think last year they made $3.4 billion on it.
Not bad.
$1 billion alone from Samsung. And basically to keep patent trolls from attacking groups, there's this open invention network, the OIN, that a bunch of companies join. And the idea is that if you join that network, then you have access to all of the patents that all of these people have, so you can't be sued for any of these things. And so Microsoft is open sourcing 60,000 Linux type patents. And this, I brought this up, number one, to clear up the headline, because a lot of people are like, oh, we're going to be able to get the Windows code now. That's not the case. But Microsoft has been a big fan of open source for a while, and I don't think they get the credit for that they probably deserve. And so this is a big one that they've done. So that was good.
Very nice. Well, more importantly, one of these days I want to get, Power Apps 911 needs to get to a state where I can talk about billions of dollars, right? I mean, I want to be like, yeah, we made $1 billion from Samsung on our apps last year alone, right? That's a new life goal. I want to be able to, use the word billion and not my company has a billion problems.
Yeah. The 3 comma club, is that the
Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty cool though. Yeah. And like you said, Microsoft just doesn't get any credit for all of the work they've done open source wise. And I didn't realize they'd accumulated 60,000 patents on it at this point though. That's a lot of patent lawyers doing a lot of, might cost them $1 billion to sign up 60 billion or 60,000 patents.
Yeah, and did you read the Microsoft book? I think you recommended it to me several years ago, that one of their former executives wrote about. Yeah, so one of the things that I pulled out of that book was the antitrust lawsuit that happened at the end of the 90s, beginning of 2000s. What a profound impact it had on Bill Gates. What a negative impact it had on him, because once you get to having the billions of dollars that guy has, and you've done what he has, you're so far up on Maslow's hierarchy that the thing that you're worried about is your legacy. 100 years from now, when people hear the name Bill Gates, what are they going to think? And before the antitrust thing, when anybody, 100 years from now hear the name Bill Gates, they would think, well, he brought the computer to the house. That was the thing. He was the godfather of the computer. And the antitrust lawsuit took all of that away from him, because now he's going to be remembered as the guy who had the company that was doing the bad stuff. And so that's part of the reason why he shifted to philanthropy and is doing all the things that he's doing and got out of Microsoft. But it's funny, because I know so many people who's locked in their view of Microsoft as that anti-competitive company from 20 years ago. And they just don't realize that the antitrust lawsuit, when that got done, the company that came out of that was a completely different company. And so they just can't wrap their heads around. They're open source. They work with their competitors. Some people just can't get past that. It's funny to see.
Yeah, and those people, I really struggle to have an intelligent conversation with them. Right? I mean, the computers and the internet are just, they have almost no relation to the company that was going on back then, right? The world has changed 17 times since then. So to even have a thought in your mind that the Microsoft that existed in the 80s and the 90s has anything to do with the Microsoft of today, it's just so naive. It's incomprehensible to me.
Yeah. Right. So you just have to bring that up. You're like, well, there's this antitrust law. You have to walk them through it. And it's kind of like the whole music when I was in college is the best music ever. Like, there's a point in your life where you make a judgment about something, and it's immutable after that.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with like stockbrokers and like GE, right? They're like, well, when I was growing up, you made all your money by having GE. Well, that's great. Once again, we're not, General Electric does not make TVs and washing, right? That is not them anymore. They are a new technology-driven company. Accept them for what they are. They might be good, they might be bad now, but that company from the 1800s, nothing to do with the company in 2018.
Yeah, Edison's not running it anymore. Things have changed.
Oh, people. Okay.
So I want to give Microsoft some credit for that. All right. The whole reason you showed up this morning, Shane, the whole reason you didn't call in sick.
All right, folks. So I am tired of the Wi-Fi in my house. So, and one of the theories, we'll start out with this so you can think I'm a complete idiot, but I'm going to stand by it, is I am a firm believer that at some point a Wi-Fi router just gets tired. It just doesn't work as well as it used to be. And from a purely like looking at technology, electronics, like no, that router is the exact same router that you bought 5 years ago. But I've had several routers over the years, wireless routers, access points, all that stuff, and at some point they just get tired and they just don't work as well as they used to. I'm convinced this is a thing.
Well, and I can explain it. Yeah, it's absolutely a thing. You're not making stuff up. So I have this conversation with people, and they're like, well, there's no moving parts. How can it wear out? Because that's the thing, right? It just sits there and it does stuff. The thing with electronics is they get really hot. And when things get hot, they expand and they contract and they expand and they contract. And now imagine all those tiny itty bitty little wires and all those things inside of everything. Yeah, they wear out. I mean, it's heat and all that. They absolutely do. The fact that there's not a wheel spinning and cogs and all that has nothing to do with it.
GE from the
Solid
1800s.
state stuff wears out. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, my fancy pants, causes cancer when you stand too close to it router upstairs can no longer reach the corner of the house that I'm standing in. So it's time for it to go.
Yeah.
And so as I've been looking at it, I'm trying to figure out, I think that I want to go to a mesh network.
Okay. Yep.
Because I've got a fairly decent sized house here.
Yep. You got some area to cover.
And so I've been kind of looking at options. And so I think the first one I want to talk through with you for a moment is the Google Wi-Fi one.
Yep.
So the Google Wi-Fi one, it scares me because I hate Google. I think I'm well known for hating Google.
That. Yeah.
But supposedly it's not actually secretly logging anything and sending it back to them. So I feel better if that's truly the case. But one of the big reasons I'm into the Google idea is that their mesh network supports wired backhaul. So instead of having to have the router, cause I've tried repeaters in the past and they're just dumb, right? Because they waste so much bandwidth talking back and forth. So the idea is that I put in the captain one, the primary up where the cable comes to my house. And then I could wire one in down here because I've got Cat5 ran throughout my whole house.
Yep.
So then now, I'd be pushing from this direction. And more importantly, I would have a really fast connection here in my office. And then I'd put one probably up in the kids' gaming room because that's where they do primarily their stuff. And once again, I could wire that. So then now I've got a nice single access point or single wireless network, right? Because it would just all connect to Shane's house is awesome.
Yep.
And but
I nearly died there once.
You did. But then we would have good throughput. We wouldn't have any of the backhaul issues because they'd all be wired. So I don't know. That's my first thought. So your reaction to my first idea.
Yeah. So I am also a fan of wired backhaul.
Okay.
Wireless backhaul is obviously easier because you don't have to have wires everywhere. And I say that as a guy who doesn't have wires in the place that he wants them. So I can certainly see the appeal of that. And one of the problems initially with those wireless backhauls was you lost bandwidth because they were repeating. And then some of the newer ones have ended up doing the repeating on a different frequency. So you're not cutting your bandwidth in half. But at the end of the day, it's still wireless. I mean, it's still wireless, which is slower than wired. So I'm a big fan of the wired backhaul. Plus, it's just easy. You just plug it in. It's tough to screw up. So I'm a big fan of wired backhaul. And if I was to get any new thing here at this house, I would not get wireless backhaul. I looked at some of them before. I just can't talk myself into it. So I'm with you for that. I think for your house, the way that you've planned to set it up is probably good. You've got your office there that's kind of in the corner, downstairs, one upstairs. That's probably a good idea. The Google one, I think you can add more nodes to. Mm-hmm. So if you decided that you needed it, you could add more nodes. And one of the things that I've seen people talk about is like, well, my old wireless thing used to cover my whole house. Why is this new stuff now? Why do I need 6 or 8 of them? Well, because the old stuff was 2.4 gigahertz, which went farther and went through things better, but it was actually slower. So now we've got the 5 gigahertz stuff, which is faster, but can't go through walls as well, can't go as far of a distance. So that's why you end up needing these routers now where you didn't 5 or 10 years ago, because it's faster.
Well, and I would add on to that also, we do a lot more streaming, right? If you think about 5 or 7 years ago, you weren't streaming. So wireless works, even crappy wireless that I have right now works just fine for browsing a web page. No big deal. But when I'm trying to stream PlayStation View down here, my kids are streaming YouTube, and the wife is watching Netflix, and we're all doing it wirelessly, stuff starts to melt.
Yeah, the Nighthawk gets tired. Yeah, especially the 4K stuff. That takes a lot of juice. So yeah, that's part of the thing. That's why we need meshes where we didn't need meshes before. So I know a couple of people who've used the Google thing, and I guess the other thing about the Google is that it supports wired, but it doesn't have to. It does either wired or wireless backhaul.
Yes.
So that's good. So yeah, I know a couple of people that have that. They seem happy with it. Haven't talked to them in a while though, so I don't know how it's aged.
So I talked to one person who still has it, who's a big fan. The other thing with the Google is it does have some of the parental controls. So
Also good to know.
yeah, you can label the devices and then you can stop or pause them, put them on schedule, and you can set them up so that Google filter, I forget how many hundreds of thousands of evil sites from them.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
But I think all the evil sites are the sites that show mommies and daddies trying to make babies.
Uh,
Whereas because what I was trying to compare it to is the idea of the circle.
Yep.
And so one of the things I really struggle with the circle is the whole, it like just goes in your network and it just takes over, right? It just says, I am going to take 10.0.0.1 in my case, and everything will route through me, even if you don't want it to, right? My work computer does not need to route through that because I don't want to have our stream here going through an extra bounce.
Yeah. And the circle's slower than your network connection and your internet connection.
Yes. The circle. But what I've been thinking about is that if I'm probably going to end up putting in, I think, 2 wireless networks.
Yep.
So we'll put in one mesh network for Nicola and I, and then we'll put in a separate network for the kids, and then we'll put the circle on that. I don't care if their stuff is a little bit slower, if they're more protected.
Yeah. Yeah, and most of these meshes that we're going to talk about support multiple networks, so you don't have to get different hardware for all that. Then you just have to worry about stomping on frequencies. In your neighborhood, the houses aren't close enough together that it's probably a big deal. But in my neighborhood, at any one spot, I can probably see 5 or 6 wireless networks. So I have to make sure I'm not, stamping on frequencies and making things slow.
Yeah. All right. So that's the circle. That's not the circle. That's the Google Wi-Fi.
Yep.
So then I think the other contender, based on recommendations from you and a few other people, is to go with the whole ubiquity point of view. And it sounds like if we do that, then you're more focused on wireless access points, and so then I would need a separate router to continue to do.
Yeah, and there's kind of a couple. So Ubiquiti has the prosumer line, which is the stuff that I have, but then they also have the consumer line, which is the Amplify stuff. And so I tweeted something about this, and Brad Sams said that he liked the Amplify stuff. So I don't know if that works against that. You probably can't get Amplify now, but it's the same kind of thing. And they're all variations on a theme. And I think the Amplify has wired backhaul, and I think it's got some of the parental control stuff and things like that. And the other thing is some of these, most of them have an app on your phone that you can use to set things on your network, which is good, because then if you don't, if you want to make changes. But then if your internet connection goes down, you really can't do anything with your wireless. But
yeah, and one of the things, so I've thought about, because really if I think about like my challenges around the circle, right? Because if I do anything, the wife's going to make me incorporate circle again. So I have to accept the circle into the mix.
yeah.
But what I've been wondering is maybe what I should do is if I bought a new internet router, right? So new edge router,
Mm-hmm.
and then I put all the wired devices off of that. Those are the ones that I care about, latency and things.
Yep.
Then I take my existing wireless access point / router. I turn off the wireless.
Mm-hmm.
So I just use it as a router, and I have it connect to the edge router, and then hang the kids, and then hang all of the new wireless access stuff off of the old router and put the circle in there. So basically, what I'd be saying at that point is, if you are on a wired connection, you're straight to the internet. If you're on a wireless connection, whether it's me and Nicola or the kids, then you're on a wireless connection that is getting circled, and then it's got the extra hop. I don't know. Is that insane to think about putting a router behind my router so that way I can segregate the kids off?
No, and I think that would work. So the issues you would come up with there, I think obviously the latency, you talked about that, the circle's slow, you talked about that. Any sort of crazy network stuff you want to do, like port forwarding, but you're probably not doing any of that with any of the wireless devices.
Right.
So, but that's worth a shot. And the old Nighthawk might be able to keep up with that.
Yeah, and then I would think I would still, right, 'cause I'm tired of the kids whining about the wireless. So I would still turn off the Nighthawk's wireless. So I would put in
Yeah.
a new wireless network either way.
Yep.
But I
Yeah.
kind of, that's the first time I've had that thought. But I kind of like this idea of maybe just basically circles on the wireless, wired is straight out. And so then I would just need the new wireless access points, whatever I go with there. And then in which I probably could then just do the ubiquity like you, 'cause I don't need the Google, any of its filtering stuff.
Yeah.
And then just a new edge router for, protecting me from the evil cable modem.
Yeah, and I'll put in the chat room a link for the Ubiquity stuff that I have. Now the Ubiquity stuff that I have I got a couple of years ago, and so it might there might be newer versions and all of that. But I got it in place and I've been pretty happy with it. Let me find that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have this exact model, but it's close. And basically it's a mesh thing. Oh, that's not what I wanted. That's our live show.
Oh, he's pasting links, folks. Be careful.
Oh, that's just a link to the live stream. But everybody in the chat room's already got it. So these are sort of kind of corporate-ish wireless access points, but not exactly. So it's a mesh, and they're all wired backhaul. So I've got 3 of them. They all have Ethernet back to one spot. But there's one management thing they show up as one wireless network. A setting that I change at one goes everywhere. And they work pretty well. The ones that I have power over Ethernet, which is kind of cool because I've got a couple of places where I take advantage of that. They cover my house. My house is probably roughly the same footprint as your house, maybe a little smaller. And it's worked pretty well. And I can go and you can create multiple networks on there. So I could create a kids network if I wanted. And I think it's got some of the timing stuff. I can absolutely go in and kill clients. I've done that before. I will say, at least at the time that I did it, the place where you could knock a wireless device off of your network was very easy to find. The place where you could add a wireless network back to your network that you had knocked off was hidden and probably took me 10 minutes to find. My kids, like your kids, they stream everything. They were being bad, so I went in and I knocked their TV and their Roku off of the wireless networks. They couldn't do anything. And then, a day later, I came to my senses and then couldn't figure out how to get them back on. So that took a while. But these devices have worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I don't love about them, right? So if we go back to this theory that I need 3, so we're talking $250, almost $400 for 3 of them. Just a little shy of that, $275, $280, or $380. Sorry, $380 for 3 of them. And if I do that, I think the Google one's a little cheaper than that, right?
About $100 cheaper. And I think I found the one that I quoted in the chat room is $100.
Oh,
so you need 3 of them.
You put a different one in the chat room than what you sent me yesterday then.
Yeah, that could be. Again, they've got a couple of different models.
You see that, guys? He's trying to get me to buy the fancy ones, sharing the nice ones with you.
Well, and I don't know which version is which.
Yeah, and I don't have any of the PoE, the power over Ethernet stuff. So.
It comes with all that. At least the ones that I bought came with all that. So it came with a PoE injector if you didn't have one, so you could just plug it in.
Okay, so then so this would be $300, which is that's what the Google costs.
In line with the Orbi or the Google or the Amplify or whatever.
All right.
It's not as pretty and easy to manage as some of the other consumer-based ones, but for somebody like you and I, not a big deal.
And so if I go standalone router, do you still stand by the...
So I also have a Ubiquity router, and it's a fine router. I would certainly be happy with it. I bought it specifically because it handled 2 WAN connections, and I have 2 WAN connections. So that is 100% of the reason that I bought it. It does not have a couple of things that I wish that it had. For instance, it does not have a monthly bandwidth meter. So internet connections these days have caps. There's no good way on that router to go in and see where I'm at on my cap. There's also not a good way on there to knock a machine off or, block its internet access or something. Of course, you'd be doing that with the Circle or something else.
Yeah. So Circle's handling all the kid duties, I think.
Yep. I will tell you, and I don't think I told the story on the podcast. I was fighting with that. I got a new cable modem and I was having problems, and I was fighting with my router and the cable modem because my router kept switching over to the DSL connection, exactly the reason that I bought it. And I was trying to test my cable modem, so I got upset. I was frustrated, and I went and disabled the DSL connection on the router so that it wouldn't find that anymore. Except what I really did was disable the LAN connection on the router. And so immediately my SSH window went away, my web browser went away. And as is a great security feature, none of the management interfaces are available from the WAN side. So as soon as I disabled that LAN interface, it was game over. It was time to get the paper clip out, factory reset. Other than that, I haven't sworn it. And I've had that thing for forever, 3 or 4 years. But I think any of them would be fine, but that one's worked well.
Yeah, no, I kind of like this idea because it looks like the standalone routers, right? I've never bought just a router, or not in 20 years. Yeah. But I mean, it looks like they start at like $50 for some of those Ubiquiti.
Yeah.
And at this point, I am not doing anything anymore, right? I mean, the old days I used to have 1,700 firewall port forwarding rules, but right now I'm not forwarding anything in here because nothing's in this house.
Yeah, I am. And so that one worked fine. It is very much not a consumer-based product. So, the web page has edges on it and things like that. But it's got a web interface. I've had no problems with it. But I'm sure whatever else you get would be fine too.
Very cool. All right. Well, I'm going to order something today. So.
All right. Yeah, we got kind of lost on that. We got to finish this up.
Yep.
I got to go get some lunch. You got to go get some lunch. The community corner, we talked a little bit about the Oklahoma Power Apps and Flow group that April's running. So jump out there, sign up for their stuff. They would love to hear you talk about stuff. And I don't mean you, I mean other people, the other you.
All right. Next week, I will be in sunny, very hot, I'm assuming, Phoenix, Arizona for the Power Summit. I'm doing about 75 different sessions. So if you are there, come check me out. We are hopeful that I will be broadcasting live from there. So Todd will be sitting there, with his Syscat sign on the wall, and I will be in a hotel room doing some fancy stuff. So we'll see how that works out next week.
Yep. I will pull the audible on that. And then what are you doing the week after that?
So October 24th, the launch of the Power Apps and Flow Cincinnati user group. Very exciting. Brian Dang from Microsoft fame and fortune will be flying in just to help us launch the user group. So that's kind of a big deal. Brian is a celebrity amongst celebrities. So him coming to town to see us will be a lot of fun.
That's very cool. The week after that, or actually a couple of days after that, I'm going to be teaching a class in Omaha, an admin class. That might be sold out. I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but it was within a couple of that. But it's going to be some on-prem admin, some cloud admin all day, Friday, October 26th. I'm spending my anniversary teaching SharePoint and Office 365 in Omaha, Nebraska. If you've got questions about that, you can go to my blog or hit the show notes here.
And then keeping on the theme, the very next day, I will be doing SharePoint Saturday Cincinnati, a little SharePoint Power Apps and Flow, oh my. I think really my goal there is I'm just going to talk about some of the plumbing, how they all work together. So easy enough. And then, right, everybody got their ears perked up.
Oh boy, I can hardly wait. I would do a drum roll, but it'd be very obnoxious.
So there is a Power Apps and Flow training course that I am writing and will be delivering live. That is the first week in November. There'll be a one-day class for if you have no idea what the heck Power Apps and Flow is. You want to start at the very, very beginning. We're going to do one day on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following week, it'll be a 4-day course that we're going to do Power Apps and Flow and listen to me talk a whole bunch and be way behind after the first hour. I'll be like, man, I'm about 7 hours behind because I've got so much content I want to share. And then just this morning, we had a nice little meeting. And so what we're going to do for the hands-on lab, instead of like doing like a lab of kind of things Shane demoed like you traditionally do, the hands-on lab portion of that whole class is going to be building step-by-step like the way we would build a customer's quoting app. So we're going to start at a blank canvas and work through, like, if I was building your quoting app for you, here's the order and the steps I would do things. We're going to make that the hands-on lab. So very excited about that.
Where can people sign up for that app?
PowerApps911.com/training. And if in the show notes you mention a certain podcast, you will get a ginormous discount. I get really confused as to what the number is, but I really want to say it's at least 10%, but I think it's more. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, excellent. Not to be outdone, December 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I will be in beautiful Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Ooh.
Mostly I like to go there because Shane can't pronounce it, and then he can't badmouth me about going there.
True story.
So on the 3rd, I will be teaching an all-day class on more on administration, and then the 4th and the 5th is the conference proper, and doing all kinds of admin stuff there. I forget I've submitted for so many conferences, I've forgotten what I'm doing where. But if you are one of our listeners and you are in Europe, you'll regret it if you don't end up going there. Slovenia is, we gushed about them last week, but it is just one of those unrecognized gems in Europe, and can't wait to go back.
Yep. And then one of the unrecognized gems here in the United States of America is Branson, Missouri, where the North American Collaboration Summit will happen. Yep. March 14th and 15th. That is very exciting. Hopefully Todd Clint will be showing up. I hear he's trying to get on the list.
I'm sucking up to Mark Rackley as much as it pains me, but we'll see what I can do. Get out there.
Very cool.
That's good. We got 2 minutes till the top of the hour, so So thanks everybody. We'll see you next week. Hopefully Shane's internet connection in his hotel room will hold up and we'll be able to bring him in. But maybe you'll already be at the Power Apps or the Power Summit thing, and you'll just be busy going to classes and won't be able to watch our podcast. But please join us next week for 406. And any parting words for the folks, Shane?
Love you show. Bye-bye.
Talk to you guys later.